Hello and welcome to GameSec. It's time once again to check out some more games that have been released for these ancient consoles somewhat recently. I always say this, but I love that new games are still being made for these things. And the NeoGeo has become a popular console to bring new games to for whatever reason, so let's start out with one of those. This is Project Neon for the NeoGeo from Full Set, or is that Food JJ Set? This is an overhead vertical shooter. Actually, bullet hell might be a more apt description, even though it doesn't put quite as many bullets on screen as some shooters do. But it puts a lot, and the bullets tend to be bigger. You play as him. Yeah, him. In the options screen, you have a choice between Yoko and Tate mode. The artwork is mostly the same in both modes. In Yoko mode, it plays as kind of a horizontal shooter. However, the HUD, as well as any on-screen icons that contain text, are flipped so that you can read them, like this 420 coin. No, there isn't a 69 coin. The controls are flipped as well, so it's perfectly playable. This is the default mode. But the Tate mode is how it was designed to be played. I love that word. Tate. 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 So let's talk a little bit about the game itself. As you play, you'll see a set of power-up icons that are linked together. Touch the one that you want. Main will upgrade your main weapon. Wide gives you or upgrades your wide shot. These both work together, one's not switched out for the other, so you don't have to choose between two different styles of weapons or anything. Then there's a beam icon. This adds another beam to your stock. The beam fires, get this, a beam from your ship, and it does beam things. It can absorb enemy fire and protect you, but it only lasts a few seconds, so be careful. Sometimes your shot will turn pink for a limited time, so you can chain as many enemies as you can for extra points. Each stage has a bunch of quick, what I guess would be mini-bosses, and these guys can be a little annoying. But the main bosses of each stage are pretty damn fun to fight. Except the stage 1 boss. He can go straight to hell. I like that the bosses have life bars. Not only that, but the life bars are segmented. Once you finish off a segment, the boss will change his attack style. The game can get pretty hard, and honestly, only the hardcore need apply. I mean, first of all, it's on the NeoGeo. Second of all, it's a Tate mode shooter. Lastly, it can get pretty nuts. So this game is for a very niche audience. There are only 5 stages, but good luck with that 5th stage. The graphics here are excellent. I really like the way everything is drawn, and of course the color is fantastic. The sound is very good, and the music is mostly great. Now, everyone knows that the NeoGeo has 7 channels dedicated to real voice speech. Well, there are no voices in this game, and some of these channels are being used for sounds that aren't real voice speech. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that might be illegal. As you could expect, the game comes in both MVS and AES versions. The artwork looks pretty cool. The PCBs are beveled, both of them. It'd be kind of funny if only one of them were. What's more is that these games can be updated via Wi-Fi, though I can't show you that because these boards are prototypes and it doesn't quite work. I think they were saying that you might even be able to submit your high score this way. While this subgenre of shooter really isn't my specialty, I can appreciate that people who like trying to 1cc things and getting high scores will probably love this, as it's very well made. For a homebrew game, it feels absolutely professional. This is The Meeting from MegaCat Studios. It's a puzzle platformer for the NES. You're a bull's head, I guess, hunting for the rest of your body parts. You can jump and float by pressing jump again. You can also tap the B button to headbutt your enemies and hold it to charge. You'll also get other moves like telekinesis or the ability to move past a single brick. You can swap between these abilities by pressing the select button and do these moves by pressing up and B. These, along with the floaty jump, will drain a meter that's under your life bar, so you can't just do all of these things willy-nilly. You need to get the key and make it to the exit. There are also buttons in some levels, sometimes even more than one button. You definitely want to press these because they'll change the level structure around a bit, which can work to your advantage. Overall, the game is quite fun, and I usually have a very low tolerance for puzzle games. That said, I made it to round 9 of the first world and then, well, I got bored. The good news though is that there's a password feature, so I don't have to do it all at once like I'm trying to do here recording this footage. So I came back a few days later, input the password, got past level 9, and faced my first boss fight. These can be pretty inventive, and some of them make you figure out a lot of things to beat them. The graphics are perfectly fine, and the music is pretty good, at least what I've heard of it. It comes in a shrink-wrapped cardstock box with a color manual, styrofoam piece, and a cartridge with a beveled PCB from RetroStage. I think this is worth trying if you like puzzle platformers. For me, it's great in short spurts. Short doses! Doses definitely sound better. Also from MegaCat is Tenebra from Haplo. This is a maze game that really harkens back to those primitive games you play on the computers at school, assuming you're like 60 years old or so. You need to make it to the exit. You can only walk in lit areas, but you can carry a torch. You can go through walls at certain places, but not whilst carrying the torch. So you might need to use your brain sometimes. I don't like using my brain, it's kind of defective, you know? Still, it does well for a game of this type if you're yearning for those really old-school computer titles. The graphics are simple, of course, and the sound even more so. They're exactly what they're meant to be. There's also Tenebra or Tenebra 2. I don't want to say that this is more of the same, but it's more of the same. I don't have anything else to say here except that it exists and you get more mazes. These games come in a shrink-wrapped box and a cartridge just like The Meeting did. However, the PCB is made by MegaCat themselves. Okay, so I mentioned some games from MegaCat Studios for the NES, but they also have some for the Genesis, and a couple of them aren't even out yet, so let's check them out. This is Rocket Panda from MegaCat Studios. In this one, you play as a rocket that's strapped onto a panda. In each level, there are badgers in cages for you to rescue. Get them all and grab the key to unlock the exit. Then proceed to said exit. Each badger you have will let you take one hit, but depending on the difficulty you select, you'll need a certain number of badgers still with you or the exit won't open, even if you've grabbed the key. If you have no badgers, then you die in one hit. There are some items in the stage that will let you blast forward with some speed, and you can eat cookies or whatever they are. Momentum is your friend here, and it's also your worst enemy. There are a lot of stages to complete here. There are even boss fights for each area. The patterns are fun to learn, but you need to be extra careful so that your badgers don't die. Otherwise, you can't escape the stage even if you defeat the boss. The graphics are fine for what it is, with some good color in most of the stages. There are several musical tunes that play randomly. No stages have assigned music except for the bosses. The music is simple, which is appropriate, but I noticed a lot of buzzing noise in this particular game that I don't think is intentional. I heard this buzzing in other YouTube videos of this game as well, so it's not just me. There's also a mini-game that you can access from the title screen. It's basically Asteroids, but with characters and themes from this game instead. The game comes in a plastic clamshell case with a reversible cover depending on which region style you prefer. It also includes a color instruction manual. The cartridge PCB is from RetroStage, and guess what? It's beveled. As for the game itself, this title really isn't up my alley, but that doesn't mean you won't like it. Another game from MegaCat is Lethal Wedding. This is only a demo, and the game isn't completed yet. You choose between two different women, or two can play at the same time. This is an overhead run and gun. I guess the groom has been kidnapped and now you need to kill a bunch of clowns. You go through each level following the arrow and eventually you'll get to the exit. Along the way you'll get experience by killing enemies. The cool thing is that you can upgrade your character between each level if you have enough experience. Before you begin the next level, you can also choose any special objectives you'd like to try. A lot of the time when I'm pressing a button to shoot, nothing happens. You fire very slowly. This game wants you to reload like a first-person shooter game. It would probably help if there were a reload button, but the character just seems to reload whenever she feels like it, and that's not often. The characters are also pretty big, and so is your hitbox. The scrolling needs a lot of attention, as it does struggle a lot. Still, this one has a great premise, and I really do hope it improves. Another game from Megacat is Sasha Darko's Sacred Line 2. I think I've mentioned the first one before. This is a mature visual novel where you get to choose what to do here and there. You play as a woman who's experienced some significant trauma in her past, and now you've been resurrected and need to escape, or yeah, it's pretty weird. Sometimes you need to solve riddles. There's some typos here right at the beginning that apparently nobody ever caught. There should be an apostrophe here instead of whatever this is. Also, this one won't run at all on my Model 1 Genesis unless I attach it to a Game Genie. It does, however, work in the Model 2 and other consoles that show this license screen when you first power it up. I think that Megacat could probably use some better QC. The game comes in a plastic clamshell with the same style of reversible slipcover as Rocket Panda. There's also a color manual, and the cartridge PCB is beveled. It's Megacat's own brand of PCB. Anyway, if you're into visual novels, then I say give this one a go, if you have a Game Genie. Lastly on the Genesis from Megacat is ZPF. Or is that ZPF? This is another demo and the game is still being made. It's a horizontal shooter that really did well on Kickstarter. As a game, it's pretty good. You have a regular attack, a melee attack, and a bomb. You earn money by shooting down enemies, and then you can buy stuff in the shops. I haven't quite figured out how to use the shops yet, as I always get a game over after I beat any stage, which is weird, so I have no money to get anything with when I start a different stage. Ah well, it's a demo. You can select your stage and also one of 3 different ships. As you play, the stage will change visually every 20 to 30 seconds or so. You don't stay in any one segment for very long at all. Eventually, of course, you get to the boss. The graphics for me are a mixed bag. Some of them are quite good, mostly the bigger enemies and the bosses. A couple of the areas I found a bit ugly, like this right here. I think it's the unusual color scheme that they used. These garish colors don't go well together at all. My eyeballs are not enjoying this. I also don't care for how this boss flashes completely white. Not only is it very annoying to look at, but it makes it difficult to appreciate the artistic detail on the character itself. Thankfully, this is the only boss that does this. I know a lot of people have voiced some displeasure in the backwards parallax scrolling that some of the stages have, so maybe they'll fix things. The music is pretty good, and I can't imagine anyone saying bad things about it. As a game so far, it's pretty fun, so I look forward to seeing how this one evolves as it finishes. This is Dottie Flowers for the Super Nintendo from Goldlock. This one is free for anyone to download, though I guess they did make 100 physical copies as part of a giveaway. Anyway, aliens have invaded and they even brought their cube. Nope, they're not the Borg. Maybe they are, I don't know. But you're a witch who needs to save the entire world. You start out with only the ability to jump and stomp on enemies by landing on them. But you very quickly gain the rapid-fire gun, and pretty much everything is vulnerable to this attack. You'll also gain other abilities, like hover jets to help you get to new areas and the ability to smash through certain types of blocks. Your main weapon occasionally gets powered up to be pretty crazy. Basically, this one's a run and gun at heart, and it obviously takes some inspiration from Turrican. There are gems to collect in each stage, but keep in mind that you lose them all if you die. If you get a prerequisite amount of gems in a certain stage, you get a gold coin. That's awesome! Oh yeah, speaking of dying, you have unlimited lives. And sometimes you might even feel like you need them, as you can only take 3 hits and the bosses will take hundreds. There's an overworld in the game to wander from stage to stage. You can re-enter stages that you've beaten before with your new powers in order to get all of the gems and items you've missed the first time around. I had to fight this big boss a few times, and once I got him, the game crashed and reset on me. Fortunately, the game saves your progress, but I did have to go through that entire stage again. At least I didn't have to restart from scratch. It also crashed once when I was fighting this boss, but I had to manually reset this time. The game is fairly short with 6 stages, but that's fine. I mean, hey, it's free! And it does pack some challenge in here. You can help yourself if you can make it to some secret areas and get extra life and abilities. The graphics are simple, but very colorful. The end-of-level bosses are all gigantic. There are lots of shots and bullets on screen at once, and this can result in some flicker, but surprisingly not much, if any, slowdown. The music is okay. Sadly, there isn't much of it at all, and it gets old pretty fast. I found that playing this one with the sound off and listening to something else was a much better experience. Although this one is a bit simple in most regards, I did enjoy it and wanted to keep playing until I finished it. So I definitely recommend downloading it and giving it a go if you haven't already. I was really looking forward to this next game, even though I've played it on like 26 other consoles already, but this is the first one to actually have some graphical improvements. It's another episode of New Games for Old Consoles, so that means another version of XenoCrisis. This time for the Super Nintendo. I have been looking forward to this version to see how it stacks up against the Genesis original, and mostly it does really well. Once again, this is a Smash TV style overhead run and gun with some randomly sorted rooms. But it's not really a maze or anything, so the randomness never bothered me with this one. The Super NES controller, of course, really lends itself to this style of game since it's a dual-stick shooter. It's a little less awkward than using a Genesis 6-button controller, but after playing them back-to-back for this episode, I kind of wish the Super Nintendo buttons were a little closer together, as I have to move my thumb around more than I do on the Sega controller. That is but a teeny tiny, almost insignificant complaint though. The roll and grenades are mapped to the L and R shoulder buttons respectively, and that makes them much easier to use as well. I can even throw grenades while firing. Of course, the button mapping can also be changed if you want. All in all, as far as gameplay is concerned, this is the better version as it's been refined over the original, and the controller really helps decrease the confusion and the chaos. Now, let's get into the presentation differences. The Super Nintendo game runs on a decreased horizontal resolution compared to the Sega original. Therefore, the assets appear to be stretched wider on the Super NES instead of their original aspect ratio. However, instead of just cropping off 64 pixels of the artwork, they reworked each room so that they'd all still fit on one screen. So that's good. The shop screens are cropped over on the right though. See? I'm not leaving the screen until you notice. Okay, good. About time. There's no longer any dithering such as this scene where it uses real transparency instead. Most of the weapons and some other things like explosions have a transparency effect applied to them, which is a really great touch. This version is the only version of the game so far with these upgraded transparency features. All other versions have dithering, even if the consoles they're on can do transparencies. There seems to be a bit more flicker during this boss on the Super NES port. Okay, well, how about the audio? Well, it's both better than the Genesis game and also worse than the Genesis game. First up, the intro here actually has the voices, which is great.
Dispatch a squad of our finest Marines.
It also has more voices from your radio buddy during gameplay. It doesn't have the voices during the cutscenes that a couple of other versions have though. So as far as the voices go, the Super Nintendo game is way better. What's not quite as good is the music. It wasn't remade specifically for the console. Instead, they just digitized the Genesis music for playback here. This gives the audio a more grainy or fuzzy sound. Here are a few comparisons for you. Like a bunch of other games on the platform, this one uses a coprocessor. It's not one that's been used in any other game. Bitmap Bureau says that basically it's moving audio data and other stuff into the VRAM faster. This game comes in Super NES and Super Famicom flavors. Be sure to choose wisely, as the Super Famicom version won't fit into an unmodified North American Super NES. They come in shrink-wrapped cardstock boxes just like they did back in the 90s. I like how the North American version is a black cartridge. It looks pretty cool. The cartridge PCBs are beveled. This is a fantastic version of this great game.
Room cleared. Rescue the humans.
XenoCrisis is also available for the GameCube. Kind of. There is a physical disc, but you can't just plop it in and run it like you would any old GameCube game. You need Swiss or the GC loader to run it. But you can also just buy the ROM and run it with these same apps as well. This one lets you play true dual stick style using the yellow C stick to aim and shoot. It seems to work pretty well. You can also enable rumble if you like. I did sometimes find that my grenades would fire without me pressing the button to do so, which was kind of weird. For whatever reason, this is the hardest version of XenoCrisis I've yet played. I don't know, maybe using a strictly digital controller for this game just works better. The graphics are just like the Genesis game without any flicker. However, the game won't run in 240p. I couldn't get the ISO version to run in Swiss, so I couldn't force 240p. I could only use the DOL file or DOL file, and Swiss doesn't seem to let you configure those. So it looks slightly diminished compared to the other versions. The audio is kind of interesting. There's no voiceovers at all for the opening, which surprised me. I mean, come on, we're not limited by memory here. However, the extra voices during gameplay are there.
Look at the side of that thing.
The music's fine, but the voices and sound effects are way louder than they should be, and sometimes it sounds a little squishy due to the compression.
Rescue the humans.
Thanks! Thank you!
Overall, this isn't the best port of the game, especially given the console specs.
Room cleared. Watch out!
Here's Vengeance Hunters for the NeoGeo from Nalua Studio. This is a beat-em-up that I quickly showed a while back when it was in development. It showed a lot of promise. I mean, the graphics are outstanding and the music is fantastic as well. Anyway, the game is finished now. You choose one of 3 characters, each with their own fighting style. You have a weak attack, a strong attack, a special attack, and a jump. You can also run by double tapping a direction. If that's not enough, if you hold a bunch of buttons together at the same time, you can do a super special attack, which of course drains your life bar. However, in what is probably my favorite feature of the gameplay, you can get this lost life back as long as you don't take an enemy hit as it regenerates. You can get it back even faster if you attack enemies, but then of course you're in more of a danger of getting hit. Beyond that, you can even get a projectile type of item with limited ammo, which you can use with your special button. The strong attack can break through the yellow shields that some of the enemies absolutely love to do all of the time. Beyond that though, I don't like using it too much, as it's exceedingly slow and you'll get stuck in its animation for what feels like a couple of weeks. This can be bad because you can't avoid attacks at all when doing this. As you would expect, certain things in any given stage can be broken to reveal items for points or food for health. There are 5 stages and some of them are quite long. There are also some secret areas for you to find, at least one per stage. There are secret items as well. Collecting them all will unlock a special gameplay mode. The developers say it was designed to be played like Bayonetta if it were a 2D game. Basically, they want you to stay airborne and juggle combos, which is honestly tough to do, at least for me. If you want to play like this, then choose Candy, as she is by far the most adept at this style. Playing like this looks more fun than it is, again, at least for me. I personally don't care about combos, and it doesn't really feel like a 2D Bayonetta to me. Of course, you can still play this as a regular beat-em-up. Not that there's anything wrong with being a beat-em-up, mind you. The character design of the enemies is fantastic. They all look great. I mean, everything looks great. I'm not fond of the playable characters though. I had a hard time finding one that clicked with me when it comes to the way they feel. The red robot called Golem is probably my favorite, with Candy being a close number 2 due to her acrobatic playstyle. The white dude called Loopy or Looney is dreadful in pretty much every way. Only choose him if you want to be extra bored, because he's very slow. One cool thing though is that the gameplay changes up here and there, even if it's only brief. You have this scooter bike thing in stage 2, as well as this blocky beat 'em up and even a shooter segment later on. I like how this boss takes a cue from the first boss in Final Fight, whistling for his henchmen to come over while he gets out of the way for a bit. Some of the bosses here are nuts though, and you might toss your joystick. Like, leave me alone for half of a second please so I can punch you. And yes, of course there's an elevator stage, thanks for asking. There's also your typical fat round dudes, though these guys don't breathe fire. Graphically, like I said, this game is incredible. Both the sprites and the backgrounds. Well, it's the NeoGeo, everything is sprites. It's all well drawn and quite colorful. The music from Pentadrangle is also super good, giving me hints of Anna Monoguchi's work on that Scott Pilgrim game here and there. Go, go, go. I don't have a cartridge, so I can't tell you if the PCB is beveled, but I've been told that it'll basically be a stripped down or modified Neo SD. Those are beveled, so it's safe to assume that it'll be fine. Of course, it'll also be available in both AES and MVS flavors. Overall, it did kind of take a while for the game to click with me. I think this is because I couldn't really connect with any of the characters, and also they prefer you play the game in a way which I don't really want to play it. I was good with the early demo because it wasn't complete yet, and like I said, it showed some great potential. I'm not sure why, but this build just felt a little bit more annoying to me for some reason. But hey, maybe you won't have that issue. Beyond my gripes though, it's a very well made game and it feels quite professional. This one is also releasing on modern platforms if you're interested. In fact, it should be out by now. That's great if you don't have a NeoGeo but still want the same experience. Go, go, go. Alright, I want to cover Grimace's birthday for the Game Boy Color. This is an official McDonald's product that can be played for free in your browser or on your mobile device. It was built to Game Boy Color specifications. In fact, it runs great on your real Game Boy Color if you have an EverDrive. So while you can't get this physically, I still count it as a new game. Well, new as of 2023 anyway. As you may or may not know, Grimace and the various McDonald's mascots have been absent from the company's advertising for quite some time. So it was refreshing to see this title pop up and give a few of them some love. You play as Grimace and you start out riding your sweet board. Your main goal is to collect as many milkshakes as possible in a level before the timer runs out. You can do a wicked grind on the rails by holding up or down as you land on them. You can descend a level by simply pressing down on the D-pad. Try not to run into anything or you're gonna fall, be stunned for a bit, and then lose some time. Some levels have you on foot, and you can touch red balloons for extra points while still getting milkshakes. Other times you might be floating in a giant bubble in gameplay that's a bit reminiscent of Flappy Bird. At the end of a level, you're judged on your worth as a human being. Hell yeah, of course I got all the milkshakes. There are some cutscenes here and there that feature the characters communicating with common text vernacular. It's kinda weird to see this stuff in a Game Boy Color game. This one is extremely short. It'll take you less than 15 minutes to get through the first time. But hey, come on, it's free. Beyond the main game, there is a score attack as well as a free skate mode that you can enjoy. Overall, it's pretty fun for what it is. The graphics are decently good for the Game Boy Color with some occasionally nice scrolling. The music is pleasant as well and is in full stereo. That's pretty sick! I think if this had been released back in the day with a whole bunch more levels, it would have been a worthy licensed title. You might as well try this one out if you haven't. Oh, and by the way, it will not work on a regular Game Boy. And there you go, some new or new-ish games for old consoles, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I love it. So are there any new games for old consoles that you're currently playing? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. Are you facing difficult problems in your life that you wish would just go away?
Try drugs!
Take it from Mario. He's got big problems, but he knows if you pop enough pills, they'll eventually go away.
Guarantee!
Of course, Mario tells his parents that they're just vitamin capsules. Everyone knows that you can't OD on vitamins, so his parents leave him alone.
They're so dumb!
While Mario is not a licensed doctor with a degree, he definitely knows that drugs help him. So be like Mario and start taking drugs today.
Winners use drugs!